Hello folks, I'm Alex, this is Alex Unabridged, and this is the Spooky Scary Skeleton tag. So welcome back to the channel if that is the case. Yes, a little spooky season themed tag today. This is an original tag, I think created last year by Nicole from Nicole's Bookish Nook. And I was tagged by Pat from Book Chat with Pat. So thank you very much for that tag, Pat. I will link to both Pat's and Nicole's videos in the description as always. Okay, on with the prompts then. Prompt number 1, Witchy Mayhem. Name a book you loved or hated about witches. I'm going to go back to my childhood for this one and go with The Worst Witch by Jill Murphy. This was a series of books, in fact, that I really loved as a kid. The first one, The Worst Witch, came out, I think, in the mid-70s. I won't have read them until probably at least the late 80s, early 90s, I wouldn't have thought. But these follow a group of witches, really, a witch students. The main protagonist being Mildred Hubble, and it follows her time at Miss Cackle's Academy for Witchcraft, I think it's called, something like that. And so it's kind of a little bit kind of, sort of boarding school type, story, but with witches. And Mildred particularly is very well-meaning, but extremely clumsy and prone to mishaps. And I think I liked this so much because that was me. When I was a kid, I was always well-meaning, but oh my goodness, yeah, I was a klutz. I was a real klutz. And I would, forget my head if it wasn't screwed on. So I think I enjoyed that element of it. But yeah, it follows, I think each book covered like a term at school, and all the various, lessons, potions, and, flying and all that kind of stuff. And all the mishaps and all of the kind of the negotiating, the social side of school in terms of, other witches that weren't maybe quite as, well-meaning. And yeah, I just remember really enjoying it. It was a really good, fun series of books. And they made a film of it, a TV film of it, I think in the 1980s, which I really liked as well. And there has been a modern series made of it as well, like in the early 2000s, something like that. But yeah, I remember the books very well and really enjoyed those. Okay, prompt number 2 then is The Pumpkin King, a fiction book about a spooky main character. I don't know whether I'd call this one the main character, but certainly this is the titular character, and that's from The Outsider by Stephen King. So the main kind of entity in that is extremely creepy. It's got some dark stuff in that book, like the opening of it. It opens with an extremely dark murder of a child. And the main entity in it, without giving too much away, or the main threat in it is kind of, the idea that people might not be what they seem or who they seem, and, the idea of someone or something being able to assume someone else's form. And then actually commit unspeakable acts. Yeah, it's quite a dark one, and it's very, very creepy in places. This main threat is extremely creepy in places. But I really enjoyed The Outsider. I really like it. It's one of my favourite Stephen Kings. Okay, prompt number 3 then is Orange Fever, a book with the word orange in the title, or a book with an orange cover. For this one, I am going to go with The Stepford Wives by Ira Levin. I read this earlier this year, back in January. I'd read Rosemary's Baby the year before and loved it, so it was time to go for The Stepford Wives. And yeah, this is a cracking science fiction, horror, satire. It's a really good short read. It's creepy. It's tense. It's funny as well. Darkly funny. And sharp as well. It's got some sharp observations, social commentary in it. yeah, I really like R11. I need to like keep going on his stuff. I've read a few now, but the Stepford Wives, yeah, it's an absolute great one. If you haven't read it, thoroughly recommend it. Okay, prompt number 4: Ghouls and Ghosts. A book you love about ghouls or ghosts. Um, I don't read a huge amount of ghost stories or things with ghouls in particularly, or I haven't. It's not the sort of, it's not a genre subgenre that I tend to like go towards. A couple, I mean, From Below, which I've talked about before, by Darcy Coates, which is a ghost story on a sunken ship in the deep ocean. That one's nice and creepy and spine tingling, and got some great claustrophobic moments in it. But one that I don't think I've talked about much before is The Plague Stones by James Brogden. And this is about a family who moves from London after a traumatic break-in. They move to a isolated village, where the mum of the family, Tricia, has inherited a property. And in this village there are centuries old stones, plague stones, scattered throughout. And these were used during the Great Plague as boundary markers. So plague sufferers weren't permitted to pass these markers and enter the village, and the village was kind of, saved because of that, essentially. But each year in this village, the trustees of the village have insisted on an ancient ceremony being enacted, to renew those boundaries, for whatever reason. And the son of this family does something that he shouldn't, and that kind of reminds the village, the very good reasons why these traditions, why this ancient ceremony, have been rigidly stuck to over the years. Yeah, because things don't go well. I really enjoyed this. This was one that I picked up randomly when I just started using Audible like 3 or 4 years ago. It was in the Audible Plus catalogue. So just looking for some random kind of folk sort of horror set in the UK, maybe with a bit of a local flavour. And this does have quite a local flavour to it, from what I remember. I think it's kind of like Black Country, which is kind of sort of West Midlands, Birmingham sort of area, I think. And it does have some kind of local history and stuff in there. And it has, kind of historical elements as well. It's partly set in, sort of the present, and then you do get some stuff from the Great Plague, era, at the time of the Great Plague. And yeah, I was really impressed with this. It was one that I just wouldn't have picked up had it not been for it being free on Audible. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's one that I think is worth a go. It's a good, quick, kind of fun, punchy read, or listen. So yeah, I think that's one that I don't see talked about much on BookTube, and yeah, it's a decent book. It's a good book. Okay, prompt number 5 then is Horrible Horrors. Your least favourite horror, thriller, or mystery book. This is a toss-up between The Ruins by Scott Smith and How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. The Ruins, there is some great body horror in there. I do like the setting. I think that's done well, but the characters, they all annoyed the hell out of me, and there was not one of them that I could actually root for. So, I struggle with stuff where I can't root for at least one. I don't mind if the rest of them are total idiots, but if there's not one that I can root for, then I struggle a bit. But as I say, the setup, the threat, the body horror sections of it, I think are actually really good in that. I think that's why it disappointed me so much, because I couldn't properly engage with it so much, because the characters were all so irritating to me. How to Sell a Haunted House, I think that's just, to be fair, I think that probably would get it as my least favourite, because I think just the whole book just annoyed the hell out of me, to be honest. I nearly DNF'd that several times. But I just thought, no, keep going. You might, these characters might, again, it's a character issue. these characters might, they might come around, they might, have that kind of pivot moment. And it happened a bit, but not enough. But yeah, just generally that one I think was like a thoroughly disappointing one for me, because everything about it should be stuff that I love, but it wasn't. So yeah, I guess that one, How to Sell a Haunted House, is probably my least favourite. Okay, prompt number 6 then is Gothic Wonders, a favourite Gothic-themed book you've read in the last 5 years. I don't read much Gothic stuff at all. It's not something I ever find myself drawn towards. But I have read a couple of classics. I think my favourite of those has got to be The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. I really enjoyed that when I read that. It was thoroughly engaging. I really enjoyed the voice of the narrator in it. I really enjoyed the kind of the creepiness of it. And I really liked the kind of the questions, the discussions of like morals and, ethics and things like that as well. Yeah, that one I will definitely go back and reread. I need to do a reread of that one at some point. And yeah, I found it a really, really enjoyable read. Okay, prompt number 7 then is Magic and Potions. So a fiction or non-fiction book about magic and or potions. For this one, I've gone for non-fiction and one that is not read yet from my bookshelves. This is still waiting for me to dig into it. And that's The Book of English Magic by Philip Carr-Gomm and Richard Haygate. And this is looking at sort of the central role magic's played in England's past. And is still playing today, and it's a bit of a magical mystery tour, I think, of magic in English history. We've got kind of Merlin and King Arthur and the Holy Grail and alchemists, things like that, alchemy, sort of folk stuff, fairies, like Freemasonry, power of numbers, that kind of thing. There's lots of interesting esoteric stuff in there, which is generally up my street. So I will, when I'm in a non-fiction mood, dig into this. It's the sort of thing I won't read in one go, all in one go. I'll dip in and out of it. But yeah, that's one that's on my bookshelf waiting for me. Okay, prompt number 8 then is Black Cats. A book about cats, or a book with a cat as a side character or the main character. This one is one that I tried to read many years ago. In fact, I bought it for my wife, who also tried to read it many years ago, and I think we both DNF'd it. And I probably ought to go back to it at some point, but yeah, it is I Am a Cat by Natsumi Soseki. I'm assuming that is pronounced. My apologies if I've got that wrong. And this is sort of Japanese satire from the early 20th century. So it's written from the perspective of a cat, a house cat. It's, from what I remember, it is funny. It is, sharp. Observationally speaking, it is sharp. I just remember it being extremely long-winded. Like, the cat is in it, and the cat's conversations in it are extremely long-winded. There's a lot of monologues. There's a lot of rambling in there. So I think I just kind of found it a bit much. I know it's kind of one that is I think still taught in Japanese schools, so it's obviously a significant text. And it may just be that I was not ready for it, that I need to just ease myself in and understand Japanese literature and history a bit more before I go back to it. As I say, I remember it having some really good stuff in it. I think both me and my wife just got a bit kind of bombarded with it a bit. We were swamped by it a little bit. So it stayed on the bookshelf for us both to go back to at some point. Okay, and prompt number 9 then is Spooky Scary Skeletons, a book that sent shivers down your spine. There have been a few over the years. I think one that still has the power to properly scare me, is The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty. That is yeah, that one still has some scenes in it that really get to me. Um, I think when I first read that, particularly because I read that after seeing the movie, and the movie scared me beyond the point of what is fun. The movie was traumatic. um, when I saw that at 18 and didn't sleep for like 36 hours, 48 hours, because I couldn't close my eyes without seeing the images. It's terrified me that much. And then I read it a few years later when I was in my 20s to try and get rid of that issue. And it works. You know, I could kind of deal with it a bit more on reading it. And actually, it's become one of my favourite books. It's a fantastic book. But one of the scenes in the book that really got to me is not something that was in the movie. In fact, it's in the director's cut. And if you know the movie in the director's cut, you'll probably know which bit I'm talking about. But yeah, there is a scene in that which still, even thinking about it, is making me a little bit, oh God, no. That actually really does just give me the shivers completely. There's a few scenes in that book, but it is one that still makes me very, very unsettled, very twitchy, very nervy. I love it for it, and it's just at the level where I can handle it. But yeah, that's one that really does get to me. There are plenty, as I say, there are plenty of books that do that. A lot of Stephen King does that. Pat mentioned The Shining, and yeah, there's some scenes in that that really still like give me the shivers. But nothing quite as much as The Exorcist. Okay, prompt number 10 then is to tag some other spooky people. I will tag a couple of folks today. I will tag Michelle over at Michelle's Melancholia, and I will tag Nadine over at Tome Raider. So if either of you fancy jumping on board for spooky season and giving this one a go, then please do, but no pressure as always. And of course, anybody who likes the look of it, who hasn't been tagged and wants to have a go at this one, then consider yourselves tagged. So that will do from me today. Thank you very much for watching, folks, as always. Do drop your thoughts in the comments below. It's always lovely to hear from you. I will be back on Friday with another video, so I do hope you'll join me for whatever that turns out to be then. But from me, for now, that's ta-ra.